March, because Larry had some software and things he wanted to demonstrate. So in the virtual meeting, it probably wouldn't have been as effective if we were in person. So we'll hold that till next meeting.
Do we want to remind everybody to mute their microphone unless they're going to talk so we don't get the background? Thanks. Okay, it is 6 o'clock. Mrs. Weaver, is everybody, all the board members on?
Yes, all the board members are present.
Okay. I'd like to call the meeting to order. If everybody would rise for a moment of silence, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States
and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Just realized, Mrs. Weaver, that was only you and I doing that because
I know, and I felt like I was
a little nervous there, but all right.
I was too, but
yeah, I think we did all right.
You
Mrs.
Weaver, you told everybody to mute. What'd you expect?
I know. Yeah, I should have waited. Right.
You can't believe it was the first time they actually listened to you, Mr. Malone, but that's beside the point. Mr. Bailey.
Here.
Mr. Holtzinger.
Here.
Mr. Keller.
Here.
Mr. Lentz.
Here.
Mr. Malone.
Here.
Mr. Reese.
Here.
Mr. Shelley.
Here.
Mr. Shevlu.
Here.
And Mr. Zepp.
Here.
Okay. Can we get approval of the previous board minutes?
So motion.
Okay, we have a motion and a second, and I think what we're going to do is what we did in the past. If anybody objects, they can just object, and then we'll just go that way. So we have a motion and a second on approval of previous board minutes. Anybody have any questions, comments at all?
Can I just clarify? I had Mr. Zepp as the first and Mr. Keller as the second. Is that correct?
Sure.
Yes. Questions, comments on previous board minutes? Anybody opposed? Okay, Mrs. Weaver, that passes. Treasurer's report, Mr. Chevalier.
Yes, if you'll look in your agenda manager, you'll find the general fund statement and the student activities fund and food service statements attached for the meeting.
Okay. Do we have a motion, a second for 3.1 and 3 through 3.2?
So move. Second.
Okay, we have a motion, a second. Questions or comments at all on the treasurer's report? Okay. Anybody opposed? Okay, that passes. We're going to go right to informational presentation. Mrs. Weaver, do you want to handle that to start out?
Yes. This evening we have with us Mr. Chris Gibbons from Concord Public Finance and Mr. Steve Havis from Stock and Leader, and they're here to just share with the board the results of the bank proposals that we received for the refinance. So I think I'm turning it over to Mr. Gibbons.
Okay, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Teresa, can you hear me? Or
We can hear you, Chris.
okay,
You're good.
Thank you. Thank you. Nice to be with you again. You might recall last month there was a board resolution that was passed essentially saying if there's any possibility of refinancing some existing debt to save at least $300,000 and move ahead forward with this. It's kind of a 30,000-foot view of this. You might also recall that the debt that is outstanding of the district is relatively short in term length, and also most of it is prepayable at any time. That is important because if the large construction project gets underway again, you might recall part of the plan of finance was to restructure slash refinance some of the existing debt to allow the new payments to be fit in there. So any type of refinance we would do now needs to keep that in mind going forward, that we might have to restructure that debt, but in the same time, why don't we try to take advantage of lower interest rates? So the idea that I suggested to Mrs. Weaver was, why don't we go out with the bank loan RFP, where essentially many times we'll get bank financing proposals that allow the debt to be prepayable at any time, which gives us the flexibility should the other construction project move ahead. So that's what we did. Again, with the idea that we had to get at least $300,000 of savings. We went out to 32 different banks to refinance 3 of the outstanding issues of the district. And of those 32 banks, 5 of them responded. So the best proposal on this smaller loan, which is about $3.3 million, was actually from Webster Bank. And I'm now on, Teresa, I'm on page 1.
I will pull that up. Give me 1 second.
Yep.
It should be up there now.
Thank you. As you can see on the screen that's in front of you, we received 5 proposals for the general obligation note series of 2021. That's for approximately $3.3 million. Webster Bank gave us the lowest all-in rate, but you can see on the conditions that was not prepayable at any time. It was prepayable after 2024. And you can see the BB&T proposal was right behind that by 0.03% or 3 basis points, sometimes referred. And if you think about what, 0.25% being 25 basis points, 0.25%. Now we're talking about something very much smaller than 25 basis points, 3 basis points. So I'm trying to give you an idea of the difference between Webster Bank and BB&T. It's very small, is my point. The second term sheet we put out was to refinance 2 loans of the district, and that's for approximately $8.255 million. And this case, BB&T was the lowest interest rate. It shows an all-in rate of 1.01, but that's essentially kind of like an annual percentage rate that we think about when we are refinancing with a mortgage, where we think about both the points on the mortgage and the interest rate on the mortgage. The actual rate that BB&T proposed was 0.99%. So what we did with the idea of keeping the maximum flexibility for the district going forward was not to recommend the Webster Bank proposal on the first loan, but to recommend BB&T on the first loan so that the issue is prepayable at any time. And I'll talk a little bit about how that ultimately affects the additional savings in a minute. Any questions on that so far? Okay, page 2, Teresa, please. Okay, page 2 is essentially my executive summary of the refinance using the BB&T loan for both refinance. As you can see, first of all, on the left-hand side, the orange box, that would just be the refinance of the general obligation bonds series of 2012. And on the blue box, the combined refinance of the general obligation bond series of 13 and general obligation note series of 2018. So when you kind of wind your way down to towards the bottom of that spreadsheet, you can see on column 15 the present value savings available to the district in just refinancing in the orange box, the 2012 bonds, that produces $258,000. In the blue box, you can see that's an additional $304,000 of savings in refinancing those other 2 bonds, the 13s and the 18s. So the total sum is in the green box, same row, if you will. You can see the net present value savings to the district is $563,000. That's well in excess of the goal of $300,000, or the minimum goal, minimum target of $300,000. If we went with the Webster Bank proposal on the orange box and with a slightly lower rate, the district would save approximately $6,000 more. But again, the idea is to maintain maximum flexibility while taking advantage of the current market. The recommendation is to use BB&T for both proposals. So if the district decides to move ahead in the construction project, and we do need to restructure the debt to fit the proposed debt into the existing debt. This gives us enough flexibility to do so. So the overall point here is that the goal was 300,000. We more than exceeded it by having 563,000 of savings. Any questions on that page? Okay, the third page then is the last page I'll discuss. This is essentially sources and uses of funding. The GO note series of 2021 would be about, well, it'd be exactly $3,355,100, $355,100. That would refinance the general obligation note series of 2012. And as you can see, if you kind of just work below that sources and the uses of those funding, you can see that's the net present value of $258,000 that I mentioned. Separately, the second borrowing would be $8,255,100. That would be to refinance the 13 and the 18. And again, you can see working it down between the payoff of the existing debt, issuance costs, and the net present value savings. You then see that the total amount that is proposed to be offered under the resolution is $11,610,200, and that would give us the net present value savings of $563,000. That's my presentation. Again, it's the idea that the district set a goal of 300,000. We were able to more than exceed that with providing the maximum flexibility for the district going forward. And the one thing I didn't mention, this matches the existing term of all the debt outstanding. So we are not extending any of this debt either. Any questions?
What is this debt for? This is my first attendance of a school board meeting. I've been kind of derelict. What is the district $11 million in debt for?
It was essentially for the construction of the high school project.
Of the what? I'm sorry?
The high school project that was done in the early 2000s. That debt doesn't have a lot of term left on it, and it has been refinanced a couple times. This would probably be the last opportunity to refinance the existing debt.
What was the original? You said it's been since 2000, and you said it's nearing the end of the term. What was the total initially?
The total initially, I think, was approximately $23 million or so.
Okay. So in 20 years, they've paid off less than half? Am I understanding that correctly?
I would say paid off a little more than.
Okay, can I jump in quick? Sorry, I was off there for a second. We're going to wait on public comment. This isn't the time for public comment. I think we are going to wait. There'll be a time, Mr. Kaufman, where you can ask questions, but now is not the time for the public. So I'd appreciate if we could hold off on that. And I just got back on, so my computer froze up. Sorry about that.
With that, Chris, do you have anything else?
No, that's all I have.
Is there any questions for Chris from the board?
What would be the recommendations been made? So what would be the next steps?
So it's probably appropriate for me now to go through the resolution. As noted, my name is Steve Hollis. I'm with the Stockton Leader, and in your board packet today was a resolution that would authorize the issuance of your 2020 note as well as your 2020A note for the two purposes identified by Mr. Gibbons. The first note, the series of 2021 in the amount of $3,355,100 would be for the purpose of currently refunding your 2012 bond. The second note, which is your Series A of 2021, it would be in the principal amount of $8,255,100, and that would be issued to currently refund your 2013 bonds and your 2018 note. In accordance with the Local Government Unit Debt Act, the school district needs to authorize the issuance of debt by the approval of a resolution. That's why we need to go through this administrative step. Once you approve the resolution, we will file an application with DCED, and they will ultimately approve the issuance of the debt and make sure that it complies with all the terms and conditions of the Local Government Unit Debt Act. We will be filing that application next week. The resolution basically provides all of the information that is required by the Local Government Unit Debt Act. It identifies the fact that the security for the payment of the bonds is a pledge of your full faith, credit, and taxing power, which basically you agree that you will incur taxes sufficient to pay the debt service on an annual basis. You're going to include it in your budget, and you're going to timely pay it, and you're covenanting to do that. You are awarding both notes to Truist Bank, and although Mr. Gibbons mentioned BB&T, the arm of BB&T that they utilize for the issuance of public debt is what's called Truist Bank. The resolution identifies in the commitment letters identify Truist Bank as the ultimate party that you're going to be engaging. The commitment letters are attached as exhibits to the resolution to show you're incorporating and improving those, and it's based on the terms and conditions set forth by Mr. Gibbons. That's the 0.99 interest rate as well as the 1.29% interest rate. Truist Bank will act as the paying agent, and that's a requirement under the Act. There was one blank in the draft that I provided to you, and that was filled in with the principal office of York, Pennsylvania. So we're going to use that as the office designated for the paying agent. You are agreeing to comply with all the terms and conditions of issuing tax-exempt debt, and we'll be ultimately providing a tax compliance certificate to the school district to ensure that they do that. And you're appointing Financial as your financial advisor and Stock and Leader as your bond counsel with the filing of the application and ultimately the issuance of the notes on or about March 25th, 2021. That was a resolution that I went through pretty quickly, but it's what we've seen before.
Yeah, I'll just add that has been added to the addendum tonight as item 7.12, if the board would wish to proceed forward with that.
Yeah, I would add to that I've gone through Mr. Gibbons' presentation, and I've looked at the numbers, and I would recommend that we move forward with that also.
Yeah, I'm good with that. Does anybody object to putting it on the agenda?
Actually, Jason, it's already on the agenda, Jason.
Okay, so does anybody object to us moving forward, voting on that?
Yeah, I think we need to deal with that in Teresa's report.
Okay. Sounds good.
Yeah, so thank you, Mr. Gibbons and Mr. Havis. The district appreciates all the work that you always do to try to keep us, making sure we get the best rates that we can get on these things and keeping us in legal compliance. So the board will vote on that probably shortly. So thank you.
Thank you.
Chris, I have to tell you, over the years, it's been a real joy to see you at every time. You always bring good news, so thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Zepp. Appreciate your support.
Please keep up the good work.
Thank you.
Every time you show up.
Okay, Mrs. Weaver, anything else regarding that?
No, you can move on.
Okay. I think we've reached the point of the agenda for hearing of the patrons. This is for agenda items only. So, Mr. Kaufman, I apologize. I didn't mean to cut you off, but I knew that we were going to have this opportunity coming up. So, if we have, I know Dr. Mancuso said nobody had emailed in at this point, but if we do have anybody for patrons, hearing the patrons on agenda items, now's the opportunity for that. Okay. So we will have another point at the end of the meeting that can be hearing the patrons on any items. Okay. Secretary's report, Mrs. Weaver.
Thank you. On my report, it starts with, under budget and finance, I would be asking for a motion for items 7.1 through 7.11, which would include everything on my report except the refinance.
Motion.
Mr. Chairman, I, Darwin Shelley, move that we approve the recommendation.
Okay. We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Questions, comments on 7.1 through 7.11? Okay, seeing there's none, do we have anybody opposed? Okay, that motion carries, Mrs. Weaver.
Thank you. The next item I would be asking for is for a motion for 7.12, which was the refinance, the resolution to approve the refinance that was just discussed.
Motion.
Okay, we have a motion.
I got Mr. Chevalier, but I didn't hear the second.
Mr. Zepp.
Thank you.
That wasn't me, if it matters. I was on mute. Somebody else. Not that I don't think anybody's running over each
I think
other with a second.
I think it was Mr. Keller. Thank you, Mr. Keller.
All right, we have a motion and a second for 7.12. Any questions, comments at all?
Well, I would think that we should take a roll call on this.
The roll call vote is required in accordance with the Local Government Unit Debt Act, so you do need to do the vote by roll call.
Thank you. I took it separate and I wasn't 100% positive, so thank you, Mr. Shelley and Mr. Hovis. So I will start with Mr. Shelley.
Yes.
Mr. Chevlou.
Yes.
Mr. Zepp.
Yes.
Mr. Bailey.
Yes.
Mr. Holtzinger.
Yes.
Mr. Keller.
Yes.
Mr. Lentz.
Yes.
Mr. Reese.
Yes.
And Mr. Malone.
Yes.
That motion carries. Thank you. The next item on my report is under operations, and I would be asking for a motion for item 8.1.
Motion.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Questions, comments on 8.1?
Yeah, I once again, I'm new at this. I was interested in Miss Weaver is talking about items on her report. Where do I find this information? You're discussing things and I'm like, I don't know what a 7.1 to 7.11 or 7.11. I don't know what that is.
Mrs. Weaver, where would he find that on the website for the agenda?
So Mr. Kaufman, you would need to go to the website of the Eastern New York School District website, and then you would need to go, and I'm sorry, I'm not exactly 100% sure. You could go under school board. I don't have it currently up.
Okay.
And you should have access. It should say school board meetings, and it should have a date, and it should take you to agenda manager.
Okay.
Are you there yet, or am I going too fast?
No, I'm on. I'm not able to access it because if I do that, I think I lose you. I'm not sure.
Okay. Yeah. So I mean, and if you wanted to get, if we could even talk, tomorrow. I can show you where that's at, and then you could see all the items from tonight. But if you go to the website, go to the school board, you'll see a drop-down menu for where the meetings are, and it should have tonight's meeting, and it'll take you to a place called Agenda Manager. Okay. And it'll list all the items, and you'll see all the documents except for those that weren't officially approved. They'll be locked, but like all of the items that we've already approved, you would see right there on that Agenda Manager. And
anything upcoming. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Yeah, no. And then in the future, that's where all the meetings are. And if you want to get in touch with me tomorrow when I'm at the office.
I think that'd be excellent. Is there a number I can reach out, or do you need my number, or how do you want to do that?
Yeah. Do you have access to email? That's probably the best way.
Okay, go ahead.
And it's T Weaver, TWEAVER at easternyork.net.
And that's printed out Eastern York?
Correct.
EasternYork.net.
Correct. Yeah. So if you want to email me your information, then I
will.
then I can get in touch with you. That's probably the best way.
Yeah, and I do apologize. I do know that I have specific questions and I'm taking a lot of people's time, and I think that's the best way to do it, where I could talk to you one-on-one, and I have some catching up to do. I'm becoming keenly interested in the proceedings here. So thank you.
That'll be fine.
Yeah.
We definitely appreciate the community's involvement. So that would probably be best.
Thank you for that.
And Mr. Kaufman, there'll be a place at the end of the meeting too if you have any questions or you want to make any comments. There is a place for that at the end.
Okay.
Thank you.
I just felt like I was I'm feeling like my nose is pressed to the glass when you're saying all these items on the agenda, and do you have any questions or any objections and I'm like, I have no idea what we're talking about. So It'll be interesting to talk to Teresa about this. Thanks.
Yep. Thank you.
Uh-huh.
Okay. So I think we're back on 8.1. So do we have any questions or comments from board members on 8.1? Okay, seeing if there's none, do we have anybody opposed to 8.1? Okay, Mrs. Weaver, that passes.
Okay, and then the last item on my agenda, I would be asking for a motion for 9.1, which is a donation.
Motion.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second for 9.1. Questions, comments at all on 9.1? Okay, anybody opposed? Okay, that passes.
Thank you. That concludes my report.
Thank you, Mrs. Weaver. Superintendent's report, Dr. Mancuso.
Thank you, Mr. Malone, and good evening, everyone. First items, 10.0 Superintendent Report, Personnel, motion to approve 10.1 through 10.7.
So moved.
Okay, we have a motion second on 10.1 through 10.7. Questions, comments at all? Okay. All those in favor, or actually, anybody opposed? I'm sorry. Okay, that passes.
Actually, can you list me as recusing myself on 10.4?
Yes, I will make that note.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, there's no report for 11.0 curriculum. Moving on to 12.0 Superintendent's Report Policy. Motion to approve 12.1 through 12.25. These are first readings of policies. Sorry, Mr. Chevalier.
That's all right. I'm just trying to help us move along. Motion.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second on 12.1 through 12.25. Any questions or comments at all?
Yeah, a lot of these policies have to do with getting us in line with all the COVID protocols. You saw like one of the first policies is dealing with attendance, electronic meetings, which we're doing right now. And a lot of these things are trying to get us up to date with a lot of court cases that have been decided. We have to tweak our policies to bring us in line with current laws.
Thank you, Mr. Reese.
I'd actually like to comment and thank Mr. Reese and Dr. Mancuso for all their hard work on this stuff, because it's got to be a real pain in the you know what. So.
Thank you, Mr. Chevalier.
Okay, any other questions or comments? Okay, anybody opposed? Okay, that motion carries.
13.0 Superintendent Report, new business. Motion to approve 13.1 and 13.2.
Motion.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second for 13.1 and 13.2. Questions, comments?
Yeah, on 13.1, are we going to be comfortable with an overnight as far as COVID protocols?
Yes. Yes, we followed up on that, Mr. Chevalier, and this is an overnight trip as a result of recent change to wrestling. That Saturday is sectionals, and then immediately the next day are districts, and those are both up in the Harrisburg area. And due to the timing of when the first competition would be completing and the beginning on Sunday, we made the recommendation to stay in a hotel in the Harrisburg area, and they are following all COVID protocols.
Thank you, Dr. Mancuso.
You're welcome. And just for everybody, we've had 6 qualify for the sections, and we are expecting 4 potential wrestlers to move on and qualify for districts. I'll take 6 out of 6, but we're at least expecting 4 right now. So we have 3 rooms. We may need to add a 4th should the additional 1 or 2 qualify.
That would be great. Thank you. Anybody opposed to 13.1 or 13.2? Okay, that motion carries.
And motion to approve 13.3.
Motion.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. I do believe we need a roll call vote for that, Mrs. Weaver. Do we have any questions, comments on 13.3? Okay, seeing there's none, Mrs. Weaver, go ahead with the roll call.
Mr. Chevalier,
Yes.
Mr. Zepp,
Yes.
Mr. Bailey,
Yes.
Mr. Holtzinger,
Yes.
Mr. Keller,
Abstain.
Mr. Lentz,
Yes.
Mr. Reese,
Abstain.
Mr. Shelley,
Yes.
and Mr. Malone.
Yes.
That motion carries.
Okay, that motion carries.
That concludes the superintendent's report this evening, Mr. Malone.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Mancuso. I actually don't have anything tonight for the president's report. I appreciate you guys at the last minute doing the Zoom meeting. Again, hopefully we don't run into that in March. I like them in face-to-face much better, but I'm glad you guys made time to do this evening. So thank you. Committee reports, budget and finance, Mr. Chevalier.
Yes. Yeah, we met on Tuesday and talked a little bit about what we did tonight with the resolution to do refinancing. That was pretty much all we covered, really. There wasn't all that much in budget and finance. And while I'm here, before I drop off, I'll do operations. Operations, we had some discussion about some issues at Canadockley and Kreitz Creek with repairs that may be necessary there, and we reviewed those issues.
Thank you. Any questions at all for Mr. Chevalier? Okay, we'll go right down the line. Mr. Keller, co-curricular. I know you did have a meeting a few weeks ago.
Yes, we did. We did meet a few weeks ago. The main items were a update on the winter sports season and how everything's going, and we also discussed the possibility of naming or honorariums in someone's name. And the administration is currently working on a policy, so we make sure we do everything by the book and have everything lined up before we consider any honorariums and personal names. That's pretty much it.
Thank you. Any questions at all for Mr. Keller? When's Mr. Keller? When's your next meeting? Do you know?
It's scheduled for March 2nd. I think I want to talk to Mr. Knob and look to back it up a few weeks into the middle of March. We definitely will have one before the next school board meeting.
Okay, great. Policy, Mr. Reese. I know you went through a bunch of stuff tonight. Anything else you want to add?
Nope, you have all the work.
Okay, thank you. Anybody have any questions for Mr. Reese at all? Okay. Mr. Shelley, York County School of Technology.
Yes, I will report. I did attend the January 28th meeting. Again, it was by Zoom, which somebody mentioned they don't like them. I don't like them either, but it's better to see and work with people as you deliberate. But anyhow, 13 of 14 school districts attended that meeting, and the one of the biggest items is the budget, which our school is familiar with it. As of this past Monday, I checked, and there was 11 school districts supported the budget. There was 0 that opposed it. So the budget is passed. I don't know if any additional come in because they only needed 8 to pass it. So the budget is passed, and we'll be waiting on the other members to cast their ballots. The applications for next year for the Low Tech School is they reported that they were down somewhat. Last year, we had 653 students new students to apply to attend VOTEC. Only 500 will be allowed due to policies and regulations, whatever. So that means as of this time, there'll be approximately 150 on the waiting list. Now, students can still apply till April 1st. Now, it's competitive to get into the program, which some of you, I'm sure, know about it. But anyhow, after April 1st, they'll be taking no more applications. Next meeting is next week, Thursday, February the 25th. If I can answer any questions, I'll attempt to do so.
Thank you, Mr. Shelley. Does anybody have any questions for Mr. Shelley at all? Okay, again, thank you. York County School of Technology Authority, Mr. Zepp.
Hi, we wanted to have a tour of the gymnasium today. Of course, that was canceled. They have one scheduled here. They're tentatively looking at something. I don't know whether Lindsay had it scheduled or not. I was just looking through some emails. But we're going through that process to get another tour. It's coming along really nicely. And I think you guys are getting the updates if you're reading them. So there's not much else to report on that. They're coming along real well. What I watch is the overruns and the change orders and that kind of stuff. I'm delighted based on my experience with school builds. They're doing quite nicely, frankly. So that's it. You want me to do the York Adams Academy as well, Mr. Malone?
But does anybody have any questions for Mr. Zepp on the York County School of Technology Authority? Okay, if there's none yet, Mr. Zepp, go right into it.
Is there anybody that would like to have a tour of the gym? I mean, you're getting pictures and stuff. It's kind of neat to walk through. It's quite large. You get a sense of the track that's indoor. I believe we have one of the largest tracks around, so it'd be something nice to look at. It's up to you guys. If you guys want a tour, give me a shout. I'll use my good looks and get you in.
Thank you.
York Adams Academy. I think 2 weeks ago we had one student finish their graduation requirements. Didn't have anything this week. They had the Marines in, talk to the students as well. So it's that's it. Not much else to report.
Okay, any questions for Mr. Zepp on York Adams Academy? Okay, thank you, Mr. Zepp. Informational items, Dr. Mancuso.
Can see there on the agenda for the employee transfer of Mr. Lansbury to the high school next year and the increase in hours for Ms. Beck.
Okay, thank you. Okay, upcoming board meetings and events, you guys can see all that. We're reached the point for final board comments, questions.
Mr. Mullen,
Yes.
I think it would be appropriate, we as a board had finalized the agreement to our teacher contract. And I think it would be well to say that while there was a lot of passion and commitment on both sides of that discussion, I want to commend the Teachers Association for their efforts to be responsible, as well as the board on their responsibility to the taxpayers. So I think that both parties have done good work here to meet the objectives for the teachers and the taxpayers. And so I'd like to thank everybody that supported our teachers. They do a great job and they deserve a good contract.
Thank you, Mr. Lentz. Very well said. I don't think I could have said it any better. Thank you. Any other final board comments or questions? Okay. Reached the point of the meeting for final patron comments or questions. And again, Dr. Mancuso said at this point, nobody has written in. Do we have anybody that's out there that wants to say anything? Final patron comments? Okay. If not, again, thanks everybody for tonight. We have a motion and a second to adjourn the meeting.
Motion.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. Thank you to Teresa for being willing to speak with me. I appreciate it. Thank you.
You're welcome.
She lives for those moments, Mr. Kaufman.
Yeah, most people do hang on my every word.
Have a good night, everyone. Enjoy the good weather.
Thanks, everybody.